Good morning, everyone. My name is Marie Elise, and I'm with the University of Rhode Island's Inner Space Center. Right now, we're coming to you live from the main lab on RV Endeavor, currently located off the coast of Block Island. From now until September 6th, we're going to be streaming live scheduled broadcasts at 11, 1, and 7. These broadcasts can be viewed on Rhode Island PBS and also online at innerspacecenter.org/RIREX. Right now, I'm joined by Dwight Coleman, who's the director of the Inner Space Center, and is going to tell us a little bit about what's been happening and give us an update on our cruise plan. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Thanks, Marie Elise. So welcome, everybody. We're coming to you live from the research vessel Endeavor. The Endeavor is part of the URI Graduate School of Oceanography. It's our research ship that we've had for just about 40 years now. And we're working right off the coast of Block Island, and it's a pretty exciting time right now because we're actually diving very close to some shipwrecks. So the meaning of this whole program really is to do some exploration in Rhode Island waters and look at some shipwrecks and tell a little story about the history of some of these shipwrecks. Unfortunately, right now, we're not over the U-boat site, the U-853. We've moved our location to the west side of Block Island, and the reason for that is we had a little front come through last night that changed the wind direction, so now we have a northeast wind at about 20 to 25 knots, and that would really really prevent us from being able to dive on a U-boat, unfortunately. So we moved to the west side of Block Island, where we're in the lee of the wind direction for the most part, and we're able to more safely dive and control the ship. This ship does not have what's called a dynamic positioning system, so they have to rely on their rudder and their bow thruster to maintain position as best they can, not a series of thrusters like a dynamic positioning system would have to maintain station. So we have to really operate where the wind and current conditions are most favorable. So right now the ROV is in the water. We're diving the Deep Reef Falcon ROV. There's a live shot coming from that ROV. This is actually what we call the quad view. You can see in the top two screens the ROV manipulator. So one of the tests that we're doing is making sure that all the systems on the ROV are working properly, that the engineering team that's controlling the ROV is comfortable operating it. There is a pretty swift current here. So we're working against that current, and right now they're just making sure that everything is functioning properly, that there's no ground faults. We have had some technical challenges a little bit along the way here. We've had an electrical problem called a ground fault, where there may be a small water leak into one of the components of the ROV and causing a slight electrical problem, and that would prevent us from diving. So we've corrected that problem now, and the vehicle is diving. We're on the seafloor. The depth is about 22 meters deep, about 26 meters deep right here, and we're close to a shipwreck called the Montana. We're right off the entrance to New Harbor, actually, so there's a lot of boat traffic out there, so we're watching out for that too. And hopefully we'll be coming in on that shipwreck pretty soon. What you see in the lower left is the scanning sonar. So the ROV system has a sonar device on it, and it's called a sector scanning sonar. So it's basically reaching out with acoustic energy and looking for reflections off of objects on the seafloor. So we can see with our sonars much greater distances than we can see visually with the camera. So our visibility is pretty low here. We can only see a meter or two at best with the lights on the ROV, and the green color is a lot of the ambient light just coming through the seawater. So we really rely on that scanning sonar to reach out and get us a good image of the target that we want to then navigate to. Once we see the target in the scanning sonar, we can then move the ship if we have to, or just physically drive the ROV in the direction of the target, and we're hopeful to come in on that target of the shipwreck Montana pretty soon. Now, the Montana is a barge. We just looked up this wreck in a database. We weren't originally planning to dive on it, but when the wind changed direction and we knew we had to leave from the U-boat site, we looked into the database of any shipwrecks that are on this side of Block Island, and this is one that popped out at us. It was a schooner barge, I believe. It's quite large and carrying coal, and it sank, I believe, in 1907. Is that right in the database? And so it looked like a good target for us to come in on. The conditions around the site are favorable, and so hopefully by the end of this program, we can come in on that shipwreck. So that's what we're doing right now. This is part of a larger program to explore Rhode Island waters. We're funded through a program called the Rhode Island Endeavor Program, where the state of Rhode Island funds ship time for local scientists. So we've brought together a multidisciplinary team of scientists here There's representatives from the Ocean Engineering Department. Stephen Licht and his group are driving the ROVs as we speak right now. They're basically the engineers in charge of our ROV operation. So Tom Rossby from GSO, Graduate School of Oceanography, and Cody Fisher from the Electrical Engineering Department. They're both with us doing some acoustic tests of their own devices that we'll talk about later. And there's also a team from the Coast Guard Academy, Rich Sanders and Gabe Patterson, a cadet. Rich Sanders is a professor and teaches chemistry, and he's very interested in shipwrecks. He's a scuba diver that has gone down on these wrecks before. He's dove on the U-boat before, and also he's interested in looking at the corrosion of metal shipwrecks and their potential for environmental hazards. So we're doing some of that research while we're out here too. So that's what we're up to for the next couple of days. We're pretty excited to be diving live right now, and we'll watch some of the action and take questions and answer any questions you have.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that intro, Dwight. I think we're going to switch over now to Captain Rich Sanders, and he's going to give us a commentary on what we're seeing with the ROV right now.
Great.
Thanks for joining me, Rich.
Good morning. How are you, Marie?
Excellent. I'm excellent.
Great. Well, what we're seeing right now, as Dwight had explained, first and foremost, with the sonar, we're looking at some returns, and hopefully we're examining the bottom, and we're making an approach towards the wreck slowly. You, pardon me, will notice the intense green, and that is a result of the water that is close inshore, the algae, the plankton that is present, and that's a color that we're used to when we are filming. Right now on the bottom, there is not much to look at and look broadly, but if you look closely, you can see the sand. You can see some sand patterns, and possibly, I can't quite make it out, but there might be some life, some worms, and other, say, featherworms, things like that might be shaping the bottom. So as we go along, you might even see some abandoned lobster traps and other items, and certainly as we approach the wreck, you might see some structures, some wood, some metal, and this, as I understand, is a coal barge, so we might even see some coal if it hasn't been covered.
That would be great. I would love to see some coal.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. We've been having some technical difficulties over the past couple days, and I want you to tell us how common that is.
Well, I am not an experienced ROV operator or technician. In fact, we at the Coast Guard Academy are relatively new to this as we develop our own subsurface capabilities. Certainly technical difficulties anytime you mix salt water with electronics, with the complications of wind and weather and current, and all of the dynamics involved in the X, the Y, and the Z directions, if you will, you have to expect that there are going to be glitches or problems that come up, and with that, what I can say is we just have to be as ready as we can for them, and we rely on the innovation, the skill, the knowledge, and the technique of the technicians, the captain, the crew, and the entire staff to work through those problems, if you will, adapt and overcome. Sometimes things are rough, and sometimes things go smoothly.
So it's my understanding that you are also a scuba diver.
That is correct.
Can you kind of compare and contrast scuba diving versus using an ROV? Which ones are good for which things?
Sure. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. First and foremost, I would like to say that it's all about safety. And with that, the ROVs offer us an incredible margin of safety because we do not have a human being underwater in these conditions where we are not meant to exist, not being exposed to pressures. And so where we can use an ROV to explore, to survey, to do work, it's certainly prudent to try to do so. That said, there are cases when there is no replacement for perhaps the most sensitive machines that we have, which are us, our eyes, our ability to manipulate and maneuver with our hands, but we want to optimize for those cases, and again, first and foremost is safety in mind. What I can say is that certainly in years past, divers were our only option and the way to go. ROVs, as our technology has continued to develop, become refined, and become more powerful, they're increasingly able to take over the role, many of the roles that divers had done in the past.
Excellent. Well, why don't you tell us also a little bit about your ROV that you've brought on board and how it compares to the ROV that's currently in the water?
Our Seabotics LBV 200 is quite a bit different. It is small. It's only about 25 pounds. So we can take it and we can physically lift it right over the side of the ship, and we can hand it down. So it serves really a different purpose. We don't have the sensors, we don't have the capability. What you're seeing now is a larger ROV that can handle the current, can remain very stable with a fully controllable manipulator arm. Ours is mainly used for observation and for survey. With that being said, the disadvantages that we have because of our lack of capability or lack of strength on our thrusters is made up for by the ease to transport it and ease to move it. So what I would say, and this was a good example of what we've done so far with our crews, is in cases where we need to get a quick view, a quick look. The Seabotics is ideal because we can deploy it right away. We can also bring it in right away. Where we need more detailed work, more detailed survey, here we go again with a debrief, which is suited to the task.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Rich. I think we're going to go ahead and talk to Bill Palmer, who's currently at the Inner Space Center.
Good morning, Bill.
Can you hear me, Bill?
I sure can.
So we were talking about scuba diving versus using ROVs in the water. As a follow-up to what Rich was talking about, is it ever dangerous to be scuba diving when you could be using an ROV?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you're exploring a shipwreck and you're going inside that wreck, it's very easy to become hung up. And now it's up to you to work your way out. As an example, diving the U-boat one time, I had a piece of chain fall between my tanks, which kept me in sort of a stationary position. And in order to get out of it, I had to take all my equipment I had to take all my equipment off, put it under my arm, and then swim out through the closest exit. You know, to me, having the experience, it was an annoyance. If someone with lesser experience, it might have been a panic situation. So yeah, with an ROV, there's no danger except cutting the cord and having to retrieve the vehicle.
Excellent. And it's my understanding that 853, which we're not looking at currently, but we will be in the future, is a dangerous wreck. I've heard that some scuba divers have actually died diving that wreck site. Do you ever get scared when you're diving there?
No. I am respectful of the wreck, and everything that I do is pre-calculated. I'm very familiar with it, and I hate to tell you the years of experience that I have, but that compensates for the, let's call it the fear factor. When you go inside a wreck, you want to memorize as to where you are. You know that there's piping to your right. You know maybe that there's a wooden bulkhead that's straight ahead. So when you turn to come out, now that piping on your right is on your left, and you have to memorize that. And on the U-boat, as an example, you really don't carry lines inside because it's just too tight, and you always want to move forward, keeping out of your silt, because as you move, you kick up a lot of silt, and it's like a black cloud behind you. So the idea is to try to be as motionless as possible and try not to kick anything up.
So right now we're diving on the Montana. Is that a site that you dived on yourself?
Yeah, it hasn't been for a few years now. I want to say about 15 or so years. But the Montana, you know, it's our coastal history. And the Montana was a schooner barge, which meant that she had outlived her usefulness as a schooner, was then converted into a barge that was easily managed by a small crew. Masts were cut, and most of the time they were taken in tow. Now, the Montana was also brass and copper fastened, meaning that, you know, she was a notable vessel at the time. Now, I believe it was, I want to say March 1907, she was in tow by the tug Buccaneer, and I believe the Buccaneer also had another charge when she encountered bad weather, and she was in danger herself, so she cut her toes and came around to pick up the last vessel, which the name escapes me. But that vessel foundered, and the Buccaneer then came alongside the Montana that was leaking badly and in trouble, took the crew off, and the Montana went down, and the tug Buccaneer continued on. Thank God there was no loss of life. But the Montana's been a good dive for many, many years, although I believe at this point she's pretty well close to the bottom. But there's a large amount of coal that's scattered about, naturally, because that was her cargo.
Okay, can you tell us in a little bit more detail what we can expect to see here? Like, is the hull still there? Is there more than just the coal?
Yeah, years ago, the sides were up. Now, I believe it was the starboard side that was the most prominent feature. The port side was down quite a bit. So I really don't know what we're going to see, but I know we're definitely going to see coal and possibly the starboard side.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bill. We love having you on the show. We love your insight and all of the history that you provide for us. So right now we're going to go into a safety segment. Since we've been talking about shipwrecks, and obviously bad things can happen out here and we need to be prepared. But while we get set up, we're going to put the ROV on the feed for a little bit so you can see what's going on.
Did you want me to comment on the safety factor?
Sure, if you would like to.
Yeah, let me just give you a little bit of my insight. You can take all the courses in the world from a beginning course right to instructor, but there is absolutely no substitute for experience. You have to be able to get out there, and you have to do it, and we all learn from others. Now, when you're diving on a shipwreck, you want to make sure that you're carrying lines as well as ascent lines, which they don't teach in a basic course. So in other words, if you come back to the anchor line or your down line and it's not there, you want to be able to make a safe, controlled ascent to the surface. Meaning you take a line, you attach a lift bag to it, and you inflate it, let it go to the surface. This enables you to make a safe, controlled descent, and the boat can then pick you up. Because you're anchoring in or tying into a wreck that's been down for 40 years, 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, and things aren't as they seem. So when you think that you're tying into a solid structure and that the anchor line's going to be there when you come back, that's not necessarily the case. So you want to make sure that you're able to combat any adverse situation that you encounter. So, if you have any more questions, just shoot them out.
Actually, we're all set up for our next safety segment, but we can come back to you in a little bit once we reach the wreck site.
I'll be here.
Thanks so much, Bill. I'm keeping this mic. So joining us now is our safety officer on board, Courtney. Barber, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Courtney Barber. I'm the second mate on this vessel, and I understand this morning we want to discuss one of the safety issues we have on this vessel. There's so many safety issues, we don't have time to go over them all, so we thought we'd zero in on exposure suits, sometimes referred to as immersion suits. This is one here I have laid out on the table, and there's one for, there's one for everybody on the ship, and they come in 3 different sizes. The one I have here is what we call one size fits all. It will support 300 pounds in the water, and most people large and small. So we have additional suits for very large people and very small people. So I think the best thing for me to do is to hold it up. And it's a one-piece suit that you slip into. I'm going to show you some of the features of it in a minute. We're going to have a couple of ladies have a race to see who can get into the suit quickest. And that sounds like fun. What you do is you slide your feet down into the boot, and this is a little valve that lets air out of the boot once you get in the water in case air's trapped in there. Make sure both feet are down inside, and there's a Velcro closure to go around your ankles to make sure your feet stay in the boot. And then you put one hand first into this arm, and then pull the hood up over your head and put the other arm in, and then zip yourself up. And once you're in the water, there's a light that you can turn on. I don't know if you can see that. I don't think so. Anyway, there's a light there. And once in the water, you can inflate a bladder on the back of the suit, which isn't really needed to keep you afloat, but it makes you more comfortable in the water. You can sit back like you're in an easy chair and wait for help. The way to inflate it is to bite on this tip of this tube and press in and breathe in, and then when you release it, it snaps shut. This is a really important piece of safety equipment. For instance, back during the war, among other dangers, there was the danger of submarines off the East Coast, right where we are now, as a matter of fact. And in the wintertime, if your ship was torpedoed and you weren't able to get into a lifeboat, you ended up in the ocean. Your survival rate was very, very short. And many people died who wouldn't have if these suits were available. Almost all ships have them today.
Excellent. So can you tell us when these suits would be used? Like, would you use these if you're getting in a lifeboat, or is it just if you're going to be in the water?
Every cruise, we have a safety meeting after we get underway, and we have a demonstration similar to what I'm doing now. And one of the things we talk about are these suits, and people that haven't put them on before get a chance to put them on. And in an emergency, the captain will perhaps tell everybody to carry their suits in this container with them when they go out on deck, and perhaps get into a life raft without them, or put them on first and then into the life raft. If they have to go into the water, of course, they're going to put these on. It depends on the situation. Everything has to be pretty fluid and work with the conditions that we have presented to us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for telling us about the immersion suits. Now, a teacher from Scituate High School, Shannon, and myself are going to race to put on the suits. So,
I should say...
would you like to give some commentary to our race?
Sure, and I should say ahead of time that it's great to be the first person into the suit, but the most important thing is to put it on correctly. So take the time to put it on correctly, and you guys know how to do it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. So, would you like to talk about what we're doing while we're doing it?
Sure. So what we ask people to do is generally just lay the suits out on the deck. That's the easiest thing to do, and open them up. Open the suit up and sit down on that white printed area there.
Wait for you to give us a go. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Go.
Oh, I wasn't ready.
Now what they need to do is get their feet all the way down into the bottom of the suit. Remember, this is a sort of a one-size-fits-all, and these two ladies are on the small side, so it's important that they get their feet all the way into the bottom of the suit and get that Velcro closure closed. so that when they get up and start walking, their feet won't come out of the boot. You only want to put in one arm first so that you have a free hand to put your hood on. It's really important to get all your hair inside the hood and pull the hood all the way down over your, right down to your eyebrows. Cover your face completely and tuck your hair in, get rid of your glasses, anything that can wick water into the suit. Everybody's doing pretty well here. Now, zipping the suit up is tough. What you have to do is pull down on one handle and up on the other. Then there's a flap that goes across. Okay. That's a little less than 2 minutes. That's great.
Do I win? In my last attempt.
Now, good.
All right. Well, I'm going to
Good work. Here's
with
the
my
mic
lobster
bag.
claws. Hopefully I can find it. These suits are actually very warm, and they're very difficult to move around in. Oh. Okay. Toasty in here. Okay. We're back.
I know of some fishermen in Alaska that were in the water in the wintertime in the Gulf of Alaska for 12 hours, and then they spent another 12 hours on a rocky islet, and the Coast Guard came and picked them up, and they were fine. Okay?
That's incredible.
Yes.
Just because of these suits.
Yep.
They're very important.
Yep. Very important. And you guys know how to put them on quick.
Yes. At least one of us.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't think I can do any better.
All right. Well, I'm going to move back over here. Talk to Kyle. Okay. So we're going to send back to the ROV footage since it looks like maybe they might be getting closer to the wreck. But I want to remind you that you can talk to us via social media by following our Twitter or our Instagram or our Facebook. And also for our VIP members, remember to log into the chat and ask us all your questions. We would love to answer them. We have a whole team of scientists here to answer them. So stay tuned. Oh, Dwight, would you like to join me?
Sure. So we just have 2 minutes to go in the program, so I thought I'd just give a little update of what we're up to. So the ROV is continuing to dive. There's a lot of challenges with what we're trying to do because the ROV is basically heading off about 100 meters off the side of the ship. And if Alex could show the quad view, you can see the people on deck that are tending the tether. So they have to make sure that the tether is in a safe orientation. And then the ROV team is down on the bottom, and we see in our sonar where the shipwreck is, and we're only about 5 meters away from it. But it's still challenging because we have to pay out some tether, we have to maneuver the ship a little bit, and we have to get basically to the right position so that we can safely approach the shipwreck. And so that's one of the challenges that we're up against. We're always fighting the current, we're fighting the wind, and the challenges of being down at depth and trying to figure out the orientation of the ROV relative to where the shipwreck target is. So unfortunately, we didn't quite get to the shipwreck by the end of this show, but we're almost there. And if you guys, like Maria-Lee said, get to the website, you can still follow along, and we'll be on this shipwreck pretty soon. And hopefully we'll continue diving throughout the day today. And there's another program at 1 p.m., I believe. And at that time, maybe we'll be on this wreck still, or we'll be on another wreck. We'll see. But please follow along and have fun watching.
Thanks for joining us.